The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
It's coming.
All these voices. All these voices.
They're mine. They're not yours. You had no right to them when you were alive, and you have no right to them when you're dead. That's what it sounded like. Good, you know who I am. And you know I'm not playing. You're going to let those women go. In Jesus' name, you're going to let those women go.
Is there a demon here watching us right now? Watching us right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me, as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
Good evening, Misfit Sugarleys, Monster Lovers, Demon Hunters. Demon Hunters, how is your night going, motherfuckers?
Tonight's episode is going to be very, very interesting. This is probably a guy that most of you have never heard of that we're going to be covering on this episode. It will be a history episode. And I love the history episodes because I'm a big history buff. I really like that stuff. And this is a guy that was just an absolute badass. I mean, absolute badass. And probably, like I said before, one that most people haven't heard of. Some of you might have if you're big history nerds like me. But tonight we're going to be talking about the Unkillable soldier. Okay, now you've heard of Rambo, Chuck Norris, Bruce Lee, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and any of his movies. All of these action stars, these action heroes, these larger-than-life characters. And next to the Unkillable soldier, they're kind of wimps, be honest with you. This guy was absolutely next level. Now, here in a minute, I'm going to give you a full biography of the guy. I mean, I'll hit all of his high points, all of the stuff that happened to him, all the medals he's received, all that kind of stuff. That'll be in a minute. But first, I'd just like to talk about the importance of history and the importance of learning history and learning the right history. Okay, because like I said, I'm a history buff. I love this stuff. And one thing I noticed very early in my life was that a lot of the stuff that you're taught in school just simply isn't true. They lie to you a whole bunch. They tell you a lot of historical things that aren't true at all. For example, I'll give you a couple examples. I always bring receipts when I tell you something. I always prove it. Let's start with one of the most famous people in our history, which was the father of our country, George Washington. A couple lies that they told us in school about George Washington. One, they told us the story of George Washington cutting down the cherry tree. And his father asked him, "Why do you cut down that cherry tree?" And he says, "Father, I cannot tell a lie. It was I that cut down the cherry tree," right? Well, his dad asked him who cut down the cherry tree, not why he did. That never happened. Complete made up BS. No mention of it through most of our nation's history until recent times. Another one was that George Washington had wooden teeth. That's another lie that's told quite a bit. Now, he did have false teeth. That is 100% true. But he had all kinds of different teeth. He had a bunch of them. He had some that were made of ceramic, some that were made out of whalebone. He even had teeth that were made out of human teeth, like slave teeth. They would make a set of dentures out of. All of those things are 100% true. But he never had wooden teeth ever. And if you just think about that for a second, you'll understand that it'd be a dumb idea anyway. Why would you want wooden teeth? They're not very strong. If they get wet, they're going to get even softer. And you're going to end up with splinters. So why in the world would anybody in their right mind use wooden teeth? Now, there are some things about George Washington that are super interesting that they just don't teach you in school. Like, for example, during one summer of his life, George Washington spent the equivalency in today's money of about 50 grand on ice cream in one summer because it was a hot summer. That's a pretty interesting thing. That's something that would be fun to teach kids because it's interesting and everybody likes ice cream, right? But another interesting fact about that is what flavor of ice cream was his favorite and what flavor made up the majority of that 50 grand. Now, some might say chocolate, some might say strawberry, some might say, well, he's probably, he's an old guy, probably just vanilla. But the truth is rather weird. It's oyster ice cream was actually his favorite flavor, and that is the flavor that he spent all that money on. Because back then, ice cream was something that was expensive, and it wasn't widely available to people. And the flavors were not what they are today. It was a lot different. They had like tea flavored ice cream and all kinds of weird flavors that today's palate would not appreciate. But instead of teaching us true facts about Washington that are interesting, and I could get into other stories about Washington, about how he was never hit by a bullet, even though his coat was riddled with bullet holes, and all kinds of interesting stuff. And maybe we'll do that on another episode. But they don't teach you those things, but they teach you the silly lies. So it's super important to know your history and know what the real history is, and not whatever BS you're taught. So I'm going to attempt to give you a history of the Unkillable Soldier. It's not going to be a 100% complete because that would take forever because the dude did a lot of stuff. But I'm going to try to hit his high points and all of his major achievements and his major injuries and all that kind of stuff. Now, there's a lot of dates, a lot of information here. So I had to take notes, just so you know. I know the story well and I could tell you the story. But to get all the actual particular dates and all that stuff right, I had to write it all down. So, with that being said, got to grab my glasses. I'm getting old. Now, because we're filming and there's a lot of lights in here and everything like that, I'm going to actually just put up some pictures of the guy on the screen while I tell you all this stuff. Because if you can see, when I have my glasses on, see the lights, the glare? That's a problem. It flares out, screws up the background, screws up the special effects, all that kind of stuff. So unless I keep my head down the whole time, it's going to become an issue. So because of that, I'm going to put some stuff up on the screen. It's still me. I'm still here. You'll hear me talking. And I'll be back after I take my glasses off and I get done with all the notes so that we can talk some more. So I'll be right back.
Lieutenant General Sir Adrian Paul Ghislaine Carton de Wart was a British Army officer. It's a hell of a long name. He was awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest military decoration awarded for valor in the face of the enemy in various Commonwealth countries. He served in the Boer War, the First World War, and the Second World War. He was shot in the face, the head, the stomach, the ankle, the leg, the hip, and the ear. He was blinded in his left eye. He survived 2 plane crashes. He tunneled out of a prisoner of war camp, and he tore off his own fingers when a doctor declined to amputate them. Now, he was asked about his experiences in the First World War, and he wrote, "Frankly, I had enjoyed the war." So this guy was a next level badass. Very interesting life. He was born into an aristocratic family in Brussels on May 5th, 1880. He was the eldest son of Leon Constant Ghislaine Carton de Wart, who was a lawyer and a magistrate, and Ernestine Wenzig. Although at the time he was widely believed to be an illegitimate son of King Leopold II of Belgium, but that was never completely proven. It was just one of those kind of rumor things. He spent his early days in Belgium and in England, and the loss of his mother when he was 6 prompted his father to move the family to Cairo, so his father could practice at Egypt's mixed courts. This led his earlier biographers to assume that his mother had died in 1886. However, in later research, it was established that his parents had in fact divorced in that year, and that his mother remarried a guy named Demosthenes Gregory Kuppa later in 1886. In his position as a lawyer, magistrate, and a director of the Cairo Electric Railways, his father was well connected in Egyptian governmental circles. Adrian Carton Dewart learned to speak Arabic. He was a Roman Catholic. In 1891, his English stepmother sent him to a boarding school in England. It was, I think, called the Roman Catholic Oratory School, and it was founded by John Henry Newman. From there, he went to Oxford, but left around 1899, just before or during the Second Boer War. He wanted to join the British Army. Now, his father had sent him off to school and thought he was at school, but he kind of did this on the down low, kind of sneaky. He actually falsified his name and age, signing up as Trooper Carton, and he claimed to be 25 years old, but his actual age was maybe 20. He was wounded in the stomach and the groin in South Africa early in the Second Boer War and was sent home as an invalid. Now, his father was like super, super pissed off when he learned that his son had left school. But he allowed him to remain in the army because Carton Dewart was absolutely adamant that he was going back to the army. That's all he wanted to do. So after another brief period at Oxford where Aubrey Herbert was among his friends, he was given a commission in the 2nd Imperial Light Horse. He saw action in South Africa again, and on September 14, 1901, he was given a regular commission as a second lieutenant in the 4th Dragoon Guards. He was transferred to India in 1902. He enjoyed sports, especially like shooting and hunting pigs. He served on light duty there and was eventually promoted to the rank of captain. So when the First World War broke out, he was en route to British Somaliland, where a low-level war was underway against the followers of dervish leader Mohammed bin Abdullah. He was called the Mad Mullah by the British. In an attack upon an enemy fort at Shimber Barras, he was shot twice in the face, resulting in him losing his eye and part of his ear. And he was awarded the Distinguished Service Order on May 15, 1915 for that. In February of 1915, he embarked on a steamer heading for France. He took part in the fighting on the Western Front, commanding 3 infantry battalions and a brigade successfully. He was wounded 7 more times in that war, losing his left hand in 1915, and he actually pulled his own fingers off when a doctor declined to remove them. So the doctor was like, I'm not taking your fingers. We're just going to send you back home as crippled. And he said, to hell with that, ripped his own fingers off so he could go back to the war. He was shot through the skull and the ankle at the Battle of Somme, through the hip at the Battle of Passchendaele, and through the leg at Cambrai, and through the ear at Arras. He went to the Sir Douglas Shields nursing home to recover from his injuries. He received the Victoria Cross, which was the highest award for gallantry in combat that can be awarded in the British Empire in 1916. He was 36 years old and a temporary lieutenant colonel in the 4th Dragoon Guards when the following events took place on July 2nd or 3rd of 1916 in France. And it was recorded in an official citation, and I'll read that to you here. Captain Adrian Carton Dewart, DSO DNGDS, for most conspicuous bravery, coolness, and determination during severe operations of a prolonged nature. It was owing in a great measure to his dauntless courage and inspiring example that a serious reverse was averted. He displayed the utmost energy and courage in forcing our attack home, After 3 other battalion commanders had become casualties, he controlled their commands and ensured that the ground won was maintained at all costs. He frequently exposed himself in the organization of positions and of supplies, passing unflinchingly through fire barrage of the most intense nature. His gallantry was inspiring to all. That was published in the London Gazette, September 9th, 1916. November 8th, just 3 days before the end of the war, he was given command of a brigade with the rank of temporary brigadier general. A.S. Bullock gives a vivid first-hand description of his arrival. He said cold shivers went down the back of everyone in the brigade, for he had an unsurpassed record as a fire-eater, missing no chance of throwing the men under his command into whatever fighting happened to be going. Bullock recalls how the battalion looked very much the worse for wear, and when they paraded for the brigadier general's inspection, he arrived on a lively cob with his cap tilted at a rakish angle, and a shade over the place where one of his eyes had been. He was also missing 2 limbs and had 11 wound stripes. Bullock, the first man in line for the inspection, notes that Carton Dewart, despite having only 1 eye, ordered him to get his bootlace changed. So he ended up becoming close to the Polish leader, Marshal Pilsudski, and after an airplane crash, he ended up in Lithuanian captivity. And once he got out of there, he went back to England to report in, this time to the Secretary of State for War, which was none other than Winston Churchill. On July 27, 1920, he was appointed as an aide-de-camp to the king, and he was active in August 1920 when the Red Army was at the gates of Warsaw. While out on his observation train, he was attacked by a group of Red Cavalry and fought them off with his revolver from the footplate of his train. At one point, actually falling off the train and then running and jumping back on real quick. After the First World War ended, he ended up settling on a large marshy estate in Poland, and he spent most of his days hunting. As the Polish resistance weakened in World War II, he evacuated the British mission from Warsaw, along with the Polish government, with both the Germans and the Soviets in hot pursuit. The convoy his car was in was attacked by the Luftwaffe on the road, and the wife of one of his aides was killed. And he was in danger of arrest in Romania and only got out by aircraft on September 21st because he had a false passport, and he got out just in time because the pro-Allied Romanian Prime Minister, Arman Călinescu, was assassinated that same day. So he's recalled to a special appointment in the Army in autumn of 1939, and he reverted to his former rank of colonel and was granted the rank of acting major general on November 28th. Now, one thing I'll tell you right in the middle of this is that he gets all kinds of different ranks throughout his career. He's everything from a private to a colonel to a captain to a brigadier general to aide to the king. I mean, there's so many different ranks that he holds throughout his career. After a brief stint in command of the 61st Division in the England Midlands, he was summoned in April 1940 to take charge of a hastily drawn together Anglo-French force to occupy Nasmos, a small town in middle Norway. His orders were to take the city of Trondheim, 125 miles to the south. In conjunction with a naval attack and advance from the south by troops, he flew to do reconnaissance on the location before the troops arrived. When his short Sunderland flying boat landed, it was actually attacked by a German fighter, and his aide was wounded and had to be evacuated. After the French Alpine troops landed, the Luftwaffe bombed and destroyed the town. Now, despite all of that, he managed to move his forces over the mountains and down to Trondheimsfort, where they were shelled by German destroyers. They had no artillery to challenge the German ships, and it soon became very apparent that the entire Norwegian campaign was going to be a failure. The naval attack on Trondheim, which was the reason for the whole landing, did not happen, and his troops were just left out there exposed with no guns, no transport, no air cover. They didn't even have skis, and they were in 1.5 feet of snow. They were being attacked by German troops on skis, and they were being machine gunned and bombed from the air by planes. And the German Navy was landing troops behind them. He recommended withdrawal. He said, hey, we need to get the hell out of here. But his superiors denied him and told him that he had to hold his position. And he reckoned it was for political reasons, but he did as he was told, and he did hold that position. So after orders and counter orders coming from London, the decision was finally made to evacuate. However, on the date that was set to evacuate the troops, the ships that were supposed to take them away never showed up. The next night, a naval force finally arrived, and they were led through the fog by Lord Louis Mountbatten. The transports ended up successfully evacuating the entire force, but they were getting heavy bombardment from the Germans. That resulted in the sinking of 2 destroyers. And he ended up arriving back at the British naval base at Scapa Flow in the Orkney Islands on May 5th, 1940, which was his 60th birthday. He was advanced to temporary major general on November 28, 1940, and he was appointed as the head of the British Yugoslavian military mission on April 5th, 1941. Hitler was preparing to invade the country, and the Yugoslavs asked for British help. So he traveled in a Vickers Wellington bomber to Belgrade, Serbia, to negotiate with the Yugoslavian government. After refueling in Malta, the aircraft left for Cairo with enemy territory to the north and the south. So on the way, both engines failed off the coast of Italian-controlled Libya, and the plane fell out of the sky and crash-landed in the sea about a mile away from land. He was knocked unconscious, but very quickly the cold water ended up waking him back up. So the option of staying with the aircraft wasn't there because the plane broke into pieces and ended up sinking. So him and the rest of the crew were just stuck out there a mile away from shore, so they made a swim for it. And they did finally make it to shore, but pretty much as soon as they got there, they were captured by the Italian authorities. So he was shipped off to prison, a prisoner of war camp. He was a high-profile prisoner, and after 4 months at the Villa Orsini at Sulmona, he was transferred to a special prison for senior officers. There were a number of senior officer prisoners here due to the successes achieved by Rommel in North Africa early in 1941. He made friends easily, especially with General Sir Richard O'Connor, the 6th Earl of Ranfurly, and Lieutenant General Philip Neame, VC. In letters to his wife, Lord Ranfurly described him in captivity as a truly delightful character, and he said that he must hold the record for bad language. He was endlessly amused by him, and he said that he really is a nice person and superbly outspoken. So the 4 of them were 100% committed to escaping. He actually made 5 attempts to escape that prison, including 7 months tunneling under to try to get out. He once evaded capture for 8 days disguised as an Italian peasant. But he was in northern Italy, and unfortunately, he could not speak Italian. He was 62 years old with an eye patch, 1 empty sleeve, and multiple injuries and scars, so he was pretty easy to find. But he did still manage to evade capture for 8 days. Then, surprisingly, he was taken from the prison in August 1943 and driven to Rome. The Italian government was secretly planning to leave the war and wanted him to send a message to the British Army about a peace treaty with Britain. So he was to accompany an Italian negotiator, General Giacomo Zanussi, to Lisbon to meet with Allied contacts to negotiate the surrender. To keep the mission secret, he was told that he would need civilian clothes, and he didn't really trust the Italian tailors, and he ended up saying that he had no objection to getting civilian clothes, but he didn't want some Italian suit because he didn't want to look like a gigolo, which was pretty funny. He was then sent to China. When they reached Lisbon, he was released and ended up making his way back to England. And he got back to England on August 28, 1943. And he was then sent to China as Winston Churchill's personal representative to China. And after the Japanese surrender in August of 1945, he flew to Singapore to participate in the formal surrender. So on the way home through French Indochina, he stopped in Rangoon as a guest of the army commander there. And he was walking down the stairs and he slipped on this coconut matting that they had down, and he fell down the stairs and he ended up breaking several vertebrae and he knocked himself out. He was admitted to the Rangoon hospital where he was treated. His wife died in 1949, and in 1951, at the age of 71, he married a lady named Ruth Muriel Joan McKinney. So she had a long-ass name, too. She was a divorcee known as Joan Sutherland, 23 years his junior. They ended up settling at Agenha House in Ireland. He ended up dying at the age of 83 on June 5th, 1963. And him and his wife, Joan, are buried there in the churchyard just off the main Macroom Road. And the gravesite is just outside the actual graveyard wall in the grounds of his own home, which he called Agenha House.
Okay, so I'm back. Take these back off so we don't screw up the camera. Now, let's talk about this. Like I said, this dude, next level badass. Unbelievable the stuff that he accomplished. And what is amazing to me is that he survived. You know, I mean, they call him the unkillable soldier, and that was kind of true. You know, I mean, he took so many injuries that would absolutely wipe out a normal person, and he just kept on going. It's amazing that he lived through the First World War, which, if you know anything about the First World War, it was pretty much entirely trench warfare. And so many people were maimed and killed in the First World War because of trench warfare, not just fighting in the actual battles, but from getting trench foot, ending up with sepsis and infections and dying that way, sickness from being in those wet, cold conditions all the time. It was brutal, absolutely brutal. He survived all that. Fought in the Second World War. Second World War showed the advent of the machine gun in a real way, widespread on the battlefield. It showed the advent of the tank. The tank really kind of came into its own during the Second World War. So many different aspects of the Second World War that were way more deadly. And he survived that. He survived being on the ground and getting shot at by a plane's machine guns. Fell off a train trying to fight him off, jumped back on the train and kept fighting with a revolver. Okay? His plane crashes in the ocean and he swims a mile after being knocked unconscious in the water from the plane crash just to get captured. And then ends up escaping 7 times from a POW camp. Spectacular. Absolutely amazing. Now, you might say, okay, James, this was a good story. This was cool. But who gives a damn? Why is it important? Why does it mean anything to us today? What some old guy that lived way before we were alive did. What bearing does it have on us? It wasn't like he founded a country. It wasn't like he invented something amazing, anything like that. Well, besides just being entertaining as hell and just interesting as hell, right? It shows the potential of what a human being can be, what a man can be. It shows what grit and determination and courage can do in the world. It shows what a man should be, in my opinion. Now, not all people want to go to war. I understand that. And I'm not saying war is the right thing. That's not my point. But men throughout time have always been the ones that offered protection for our families. It's been true throughout time and it's still true today. Whenever there is a threat or whenever something bad is going down, it is the man's responsibility to step up and face that danger so that his wife and his children can survive. That's been lost in our society today. Today's society, for some dumb reason, has decided that masculinity is toxic, that men are the enemy, when in reality, men are the protectors. We are the ones that are here to make sure that our family is okay, to provide what they need, whether it be food and shelter or whether it be protection. That is our job. Okay, now a lot of people in today's society don't agree with that. A lot of people in today's society would say, that's an old fashioned view. I understand that. But what everybody needs to understand is that it's not an old fashioned view in the rest of the world. Okay, there's a large portion of the world primarily made up of our enemies, countries that do not like us, that want to destroy us, that are teaching their children the exact opposite. So while our country is making our men weak by teaching them that masculinity is toxic and teaching them that the traditional role of a man is bad. By teaching them that, they're making weak men who don't know their responsibility and, frankly, who aren't prepared to go to war. They're not prepared to battle. They're not prepared to fight for their country or their family. They're weak. And that's just the truth. And I'm sorry if that upsets you, but it is what it is, dude. They're weak. I've seen it in my personal life. I'm 50 years old, man. I'm an old guy. But I've seen 3 or 4 little 18 to 25-year-old kids. That's what I think of them as, really. Running their little mouths, and as soon as I say, hey, you need to shut the hell up, they scatter and run. They back down from every challenge. They're scared. They've never known fights. They've never known what it is to survive and to fight for what you believe in or fight for what's right. Because we don't allow our young people to do that anymore. Used to be in my day, if you got in a fight in school, you had a problem, you walked outside, you put up your dukes, and you settled it. Then you went back inside and you were buddies. Problem smashed, problem solved, no issues. But nowadays, if kids do that exact same thing, the cops come and they get charges and all kinds of crazy stuff. They're taught that any time you don't agree with whatever point of view they're supposed to agree with, that it is bullying. Well, for those people my age, we know what real bullying is. Everybody in here was bullied. I was even bullied at one point in my life when I was real little, until I grew, until I hit a growth spurt and became big enough to where the bullies weren't going to mess with me no more. I grew and I learned how to fight. I'll tell you a fun little story. This is when I was a real little kid. I was over in Germany. That's where I grew up. And I'm on base and I'm outside just, shooting marbles, because that's one thing I love to do. We used to draw like a big circle and we'd dig a hole in the middle of it, and you had to knock their marbles into the hole, into the pit. And if you did, you got that marble and you won it. So it was almost like gambling for kids. You'd go in there with a big bag full of marbles, and you'd leave with either more marbles or less marbles, depending on how you did that day. So I'm out there playing marbles and having fun. And there was this kid named Emmett that was way bigger. He was like twice my size, like in height and stature. He was a big boy. And he was the bully. He was the one that always picked on everybody. So he comes out and he decides that he wants my marbles and all this. And I'm not going to give them to him because they're my damn marbles. So instead of standing up and fighting, I didn't know how to fight. I'd never been in a fight before. I was a little kid. So I just grabbed all my marbles, put them back in a bag real quick, and took off running. So he ran the other way around the building, and he picked up a pine cone. And I come running around the corner, and he wings that pine cone in my face. It hits me right in my eye and swells my eye completely shut. It was horrible. Of course, oh my God, the pain and the suffering and the embarrassment and everything. I'm crying like a little bitch. I run home crying, right? Mom's home. His dad was at work. And, mom does what moms do. They, comfort you. Oh, honey, come here. It's okay, right? And I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I got a little juice box and I got my cookies and I'm happy. And mama's saying, you're going to be all right. It's okay. It's okay. Comforting me. Dad gets home. Dad said, what the hell happened to your eye? So then I tell him the story of what happened. He said, well, what'd you do about it? I said, well, I didn't do nothing about it. It hurt. And I ran away. So that day, I hadn't even opened back up yet. Dad took me and started training me. Now, my dad was a state championship wrestler. He was into Taekwondo for years and years and years. He's a badass. So he started teaching me how to fight. Okay, he started teaching me how to grapple and how to throw kicks and punches. And so the first thing I ever learned was Taekwondo and wrestling. And every base that I've ever been on has two things. Well, it has many of the same things, but two things that everyone has. They all have a fitness center where they teach some sort of martial art. And they all have a bowling alley. Okay? So I always took whatever martial art was available at the base. I'm also a hell of a good bowler, by the way, because I bowled a lot too. So in my life, I've studied about 8 or 9 different martial arts. I finally settled on Sanshao Kung Fu. I absolutely love that. For those that don't know what that is, it's basically MMA before MMA was MMA, before it existed. Thousands of years ago, they were doing this. And it was a no holds barred fight. You either tapped out, got knocked out, or got killed. That's how you lost. So that's the origins of where MMA, the idea for MMA came from, I guess. But that's what I settled upon. And in Sanshao, you gain master rank by defeating a master. So that's what I did. I went and I defeated a master, and I gained my master rank in Sanshao. So I'm an all-around fighter now. I can fight on the ground. I can fight standing up. I can fight anywhere. The reason I know all that, and the reason I am the man that I am, and that I can take care of business and take care of my family, and I'm not afraid of any threat, is because I had a strong man at home to teach me how to be a man, okay? To teach me that it's not okay to let somebody swell your eyes shut and run away like a little bitch. You got to stand up. And he always taught me, if your little brother or your mother, if somebody's hassling them, I don't care if you get your ass whipped, you get in there and you do something about it. You make sure they're safe. That's our job. Okay, now when you take that out of the equation, you take that toxic masculinity out of the equation, what you end up with is a bunch of weak-ass men who can't defend their families. Then if you got other countries such as China that are teaching their boys to be masculine men, teaching them combat, teaching them toughness, and they go up against our little weak millennial punks, what do you think is going to happen? Who do you think is going to win that fight? Who's going to stop them from hurting their families? Who? You can say the military. What if the military is not there? And what's the military even going to look like? We don't have tough guys to go into the military. You got people that don't even know if they're boys or girls anymore. You look at them the wrong way, they consider it a microaggression, they run and hide. They're little wimps. That's a big, big problem. So stories like this, The Unkillable Soldier, is a great example of what a man is. You could use other ones. You could use, Rambo or John Wayne or any kind of, fictitious character you want. But this is an example of an actual living person. Not alive anymore, he's dead. But he was alive, a real person that went through all of that adversity and fought for his country and fought for the right side. I mean, he fought against the Nazis. He was an actual war hero. And that's pretty badass, And so for kids to be able to have that kind of example, little boys to look up and say, wow, that's a man. I want to be like that dude. That's a good thing. Now, not all of them will go to war. God willing, we'll never have to go to war again. That would be my preference. I don't want anybody to get hurt. But there are times in life where there's no other option. If they're coming for you, you got to know how to protect yourself. There's no honor, there's no valor in burying your head in the sand while somebody invades your home and hurts your family. There's a lot of people that are pacifists that'll say, well, it's not good to hurt people. It's not good to fight. It's not good to do these things. And I would agree with you to a point. But you best believe if you come to my home and you're trying to hurt the people that I love, I'm going to make sure that you take a dirt nap. Because at that point, it's you or the people I love. And I'm choosing them every time. In that situation, it's better to be prepared. And if we don't start thinking about that, and we don't start teaching our boys to be men, there'll be no one here to defend us. And you know what you're going to be left with? A bunch of old rednecks like me. They're going to have a hell of a hard time getting up out the chair to do it. Because we're going to be old as hell. Now we will, because we're men. But I don't like our chances. You got to continue that. Freedom is not freely given. Freedom must be won. Every generation has to fight for it. Every generation has to fight to remain free. And I'm not just talking on the battlefield here, guys. You got to fight at the ballot box. You got to fight in the public square. You've got to fight in the war of words. You got to take these dumbass notions that are out there today and flat out say they're stupid. Okay, if you tell me that communism is a better system of government, you're a fucking idiot. Because you have no understanding of actual history, of the tens of millions of people that have died because of communism. It always ends the same way with a dictatorship. Always. But you don't know that because you're dumb. If you tell me that a man can have a period, you're fucking stupid. Because they can't. It's biologically not possible. If you tell me that a man can put on a dress and go compete with little girls, and it's fair, you're stupid. Because it's not. There's a clear biological difference between men and women. We are bigger, we are stronger, we are more athletic, period. And I don't give a damn if you don't like that. It's the truth. But the problem is everybody's so fucking afraid to speak the truth anymore. They're afraid of being canceled. They're afraid of being labeled as racist or sexist or this or that, whatever the fuck they want to say. Why are you so afraid of being called names by fucking idiots? Because that's what these people are. They're fucking stupid. Period. And I realize I'm cursing a lot on this episode, and I apologize for that. But I get a little worked up about this stuff because this is the future of our damn country. This is the world that our children have to grow up in. Being led by people who think that it's perfectly fine for a grown-ass man to follow your little girl into the bathroom. That's perfectly normal. No big deal. That's nuts. They think it's perfectly fine to just have the border wide open and letting God knows who in. There's no checks. They don't know who the hell these people are. You got sex trafficking going on. You got drug smuggling going on. You got modern day slavery happening. Truth. But everybody's too afraid to talk about it. That's why it's important to know your history. That's why it's important to know stories like this one. Because what do you think this dude would have did if somebody was following his little girl into the bathroom like that? I'll let you make up your own mind. Throw it back over to old boy. See what he thinks. Go ahead, brother.
Good evening, guys. So this is my opinion on Mr. Adrian Wart. And I'm going to tell you what I think, and it's not going to be too much because James is going to do a lot of talking on this one because this is a lot of research. This isn't really about paranormal, but it's a true badass. The guy got shot in the face, the head, not in the head. Well, technically it would be the eye. He lost an eye. He got shot in the stomach. He survived 2 plane crashes, guys. That's fucking insane to even survive one. This guy survived 2. After getting shot in the face, the eyes, he served 2 different times. I think the first time he was like in the army for almost 20 something years. He went to both world wars for the British Army. The guy was fucking Sylvester Stallone, bro, or something like Rambo. This was Rambo, guys, or pretty close to it. He was a pretty badass. He was a lieutenant general. He went back for another 10-year term too. He was in a lot of wars. I saw Polish War. He was in both World Wars, the Brood War. Got the Victoria Cross, many other awards. He was just a real true badass, and I'll tell you why. He had to have a finger amputated, and the doctors wouldn't do it. He fucking tore off the damn thing. And didn't care. He went back and did what he had to do. Got shot in the face. He had an eye patch. They said he looked like a pirate, and he actually became a living legend. And I know how that goes. But this guy was made for war. He even said it. He enjoyed going to the war. It was kind of weird. He enjoyed fighting, and that was what he was about. There's some people who are meant for that, man. Vlad the Impaler was a crazy, you see what he's done. Some of these guys are Patton. Fuck Putin. Other than that, I meant to say Patton. He was another great general, and he was a crazy leader. And did crazy things. God, what was his name? Rumpelstiltskin, the guy, dude that's a show I want to do about. That guy he died at 47, but I think they shot him, and he still couldn't kill him. They finally cut his head off and burned him to death. I forget I can't say his name. I forget who he is, but he never liked to shower, and he had a way with women. He got fucking women, dude. That's a story I got to get. That guy was crazy, dude, altogether. Fucking, he liked to eat rotten food. He was a real asshole, but he was crazy. They fucking stabbed him a bunch of times, tried to poison him, couldn't kill him. He wouldn't die till they finally shot him like 100 times, and he drowned him and cut his head off. I'll get the story about it. I forget what his name is, but he's another one. It was crazy, but this guy was made for war. This guy ripped his own fucking finger off to go fight because the doctors didn't want to do anything with it. He's, oh, fuck you. I'll just tear off my fingers. Kind of like Ronnie Lott. You guys know Ronnie Lott played for the 49ers and the Steelers. Not the Steelers, the Raiders. I think he also played for the Jets for a couple years. But during a game, he was from Eisenhower High School down in by Rialto. And one of his games, I don't know if it was a college game or a high school game, his pinky got dislocated. But it got to the point where it was fucked. It got broke or something, and he instead of fucking getting it fixed, they'll just amputate the motherfucker, and he did. And he went back and played later. Back then, you could do that shit. Back in the 80s and 90s, you got away with some of that shit. Now you can't do that no more. You'd have to be out. But this guy was kind of that way. He ripped his own fucking finger off, man. That's some tough shit. I don't know if I could do that. I guess if I have to, I could. Because I've gone through some crazy shit, and so's James. I don't know if we're that tough, but I'm pretty tough, so's James. But I don't know about war tough. That's a whole different story, guys. You have to be a certain person to be like that. Mr. Wart. I'm trying to say his name. I might be saying it wrong. Watt. But he was a decorated badass. Like, that's crazy what I was reading about this guy. I know he outlived most of his wives. He died at 83, and he was buried with his wife. I know he was doing stuff for Winston Churchill, and he went overseas for him I think back then he was doing on an expedition. He was what do they call those? Representative or something. They had a different name for it. Ambassador. And he went out there, and I think he also went to the Cairo meeting, and he saw it out there too. The guy was just crazy. It's crazy what I was reading about this dude. This guy was no joke. Like, he liked to fucking kill people, like, and he liked to fight. And he won a bunch of, like, fucking, his rewards are going all the way down. Everything he's done, it's just list of stuff that he's done. Dude was crazy. This guy was no fucking joke. Adrian Wart was no joke. Carton Wart, that's his whole name. L. Wart, I think that Wart. I'm trying to say his name, but I'm probably fucking it up. Like I do. You know how I am, guys. I'm not the best with names, so bear with me on that one. So you know. But other than that, yeah, what I was reading, this guy was probably somebody. If you're gonna get in a war, you're gonna have. This guy was ready to go. Like, he's one of those dudes that. He jumped out of the fucking airplane ready to go. And like, you couldn't even stop him. He was ready to go. That's crazy. There's people like that, man. They were made for war. He's one of them. There's a couple other ones, but he was made for war. He was a true badass. What I was reading, like, yeah. He liked to fight, guys, and getting hurt, and must have been some kind of man, because getting shot 8-9 times and still survive, more than that, just numerous times in the face, the eye patch, all that. He must have been had some pain tolerance, especially to rip off your own fucking finger off your hand. That shit, you guys understand if you cut it, how bad, but tear the motherfucker off, because it must have been hanging or something, and the guy didn't want to amputate it. Oh, we want to save it. He's all, fuck that, just cut it, and I'm going back to war, and it's what he did. That's insane. That's what's tripping me out. Like, fuck, dude, that guy was no joke. That's crazy. That's some crazy ass shit that guy did. I know you guys are probably like, how the fuck did he do that without? Probably just said, sew me up, and that's it. There was a guy I saw on Rogan one time was talking about him as a soldier in some Kenya or some part in Africa. And this guy was a straight fucking beast. Like, he killed thousands of people, and they said that he would get naked, fucking naked, and get swords, and he would scare the enemy, and he would do horrible things to that army. Even didn't care if it was kids, families, he just fucking killed them. Because in their mind, he was bad. But instead of throwing him in jail, he got honored, and because he apologized and changed his life to God, so they forgived him and didn't throw him in jail. And I'm like, wow, like, I don't care what you did honorably. I guess they let it go because it was a war. Some things you get away with when you do in war, and doesn't mean I agree with it, but it happens, guys. Unfortunately, in war, the sad thing is most of the people who die are innocent. It's sad, are soldiers and other people's soldiers, but a lot of people who get hurt in the end are the innocent, and they lose their houses, and the armies go away eventually, but the people have to still live in that life, and that's what's sad about it. It's kind of fucked if you think about it. I would be kind of pissed off all the time if all I knew is most of the stuff that I'm doing is it's in vain. And well, in being in war altogether, guys, a lot of people understand you're seeing people die all the time, blown up. And your friends, there's a lot of people who don't come back from that. Just like the sniper, American Sniper, that guy was a badass. He killed like 300-400 people. And dude just couldn't stop. You just can't stop. When you kill that many people, it just doesn't go away. It's hard to be around people. You take things different. You're just a born killer, and that's may not be the best thing sometimes. Adrian was a true badass, a lieutenant general, and he won numerous awards. He was no joke. And some of the stuff that he did was fucking crazy. Plus, he had an eye patch, so that's pretty fucking badass. I like that. That's something I would do. I'm just playing. But the whole eye patch looked like a pirate. That's cool. I like that. But that being said, I hope you guys like the show. Tell me what you guys think. Like I said, it wasn't going to be that long. It was going to be 12 minutes because James had to get into the show and it was a longer show than we do an hour show. So I might try to, maybe one day we'll make it 2 hours again. I don't know. We'll play if we get back on radio or something. We are on radio, but I mean, we got on a show. Maybe we'll do 2 hours, hour and a half. Down the line. But that being said, leave your what you have to say, any comments. Tell us what you think about this guy. Tell us if you have any stories we would like to do on here, or any of your stories that you did with war or anything crazy you knew. All that, and that being said, Watt also escaped prison too in war. He dug out of a hole and got away. This guy was fucking amazing. That's another thing I forgot to tell you. Guys, that they got away and dug himself out. So that being said, that's pretty crazy. But that being said, you guys, I hope you had a good night. Misfits, Shoegaze, Monster Lovers, I love you and good night. There you go, James.
All right, thank you, brother. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. As always, up to you to make up your own mind, and we will catch you on the next one. Till I speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.